When you're in a relationship, there's no definitive right way to merge money with your partner, but there are efficient ways to do it. Here's how couples with successful careers navigate the emotional and logistical transition from separate to fully joint. Let's just get this out of the way immediately. There's no single correct way to combine finances with your romantic partner. The right way differs from couple to couple, and frankly, it differs for the same couple depending on the season of life that they're in. I get asked about this constantly. Usually, the question isn't prompted by a banking issue. It's prompted by a feeling. Maybe one partner feels like they're subsidizing the other. Maybe one feels controlled. Or maybe you're just tired of Venmoing your spouse for half of the electrical bill like they're a college roommate. For executives, the emotional stakes are higher because the numbers are bigger. When you have two high-performing individuals, you deal with autonomy issues. You're used to calling the shots in your professional life, so asking for permission to buy a new watch feels regressive. There's also issues of disparity. Often, careers in dual income households don't follow the same trajectory. One income accelerates faster than the other, creating a primary earner versus support dynamic. This can breed resentment quite quickly if not managed. Today, we're going to look at the plumbing of these issues, the spending, the bank accounts, and the credit cards, but through the lens of how these systems actually feel. Here are some different approaches you can choose from. For this, we're going to imagine a spectrum. On one end, you have total autonomy, and on the other is radical transparency with one another. First is separate accounts without any tracking. This is the you grab dinner, I'll grab movie tickets approach. It works because it preserves maximum autonomy. You never have to justify a purchase to your partner. The problem here is that it relies entirely on feelings and not facts. Over time, the partner who handles the lifestyle expenses, such as dinner and vacations, can build resentment against the partner who pays for living expenses, meaning the groceries, utilities, rent, or mortgage. The feeling that the split isn't actually fair. Next is separate banking accounts with account balancing. This is where people often use a spreadsheet or an app to track expenses, reconciling with one another at the end of the month. It works because it provides safety and fairness. You know exactly where you stand as far as your contributions to the relationship financially. The problem here is that it can erode romance and introducing transactional components to the relationship. A romantic relationship is a partnership, not a vendor contract. If you're calculating who ate more of the pizza, you're missing the point on the relationship entirely. Next is a hybrid model. This is where you have separate personal and a joint operating account. You fund a joint account for the mortgage and utilities, but you keep your own fund money separate. This works because it's often the largest psychological hurdle to overcome, but can be highly rewarding for couples who value both shared structure and personal autonomy. It creates a we regarding the household, but preserves the me for personal choices. You avoid the conversations around why did you spend that much on golf or shoes argument entirely. The friction here is usually about contributions, however. If one of you earns $500,000 and the other earns $100,000, do you constrain your lifestyle so that a 50-50 split feels fair? Or do you live a lifestyle based off of the higher earner and figure out what a fair contribution is by each partner? Last is fully joint accounts. This is where all income goes into one bucket and all of the household expenses leave that same bucket. This requires financial intimacy. There are no secrets. It fosters a sense of being a single economic unit, which can be incredibly bonding and daunting at the same time. Oftentimes, one of the hurdles to overcome here is loss of identity. Some people feel belittled when they have to explain a purchase from the joint pot. It also carries the highest liability. If the relationship ever sours, the money is accessible to both parties equally. So now that we discussed some of the mechanics, now we're going to talk about the feelings and the different seasons of life and why you'll likely change as you progress through them. You won't pick one system and stay there forever. As your life gets more complex, your need for efficiency usually overrides your desire for separation and autonomy. First, we'll talk about the trust building phase. This is usually when you're dating or living together. This is where people feel that I love you, but I don't know if you're good with money yet. Here, people often keep things separate because you're protecting yourself, and this can be healthy. You're establishing trust and observing each other's habits without risking your own financial security. Next is the cognitive overload phase, and this usually happens shortly after marriage or most certainly by the time you begin having kids. This is when people feel too tired to do the math on divvying up expenses on a frequent basis. You're managing teams at work and toddlers at home. You don't have the mental bandwidth to calculate pro rata shares of a utility bill. You merge finances not because it's romantic, but because it reduces administrative fatigue. Efficiency becomes the ultimate currency in the relationship. Last is the income disparity phase, and this is the executive leap. This is where people switch from the conversation of, is this our money or my money? Often in your 40s or 50s, one partner's income usually explodes, in part due to equity events or a sizable promotion, while the other may stay where they are or downshift to focus on the home or stay steady with their income stream. If you have separate accounts here, the power dynamic can get weird. One person wants to fly business class while the other can only afford economy. This is where moving to joint accounts or a pro rata hybrid becomes more useful to preserve the emotional health of the marriage. It signals that the win for one is a win for the family. But for a personal perspective on me, my wife, and our family, when we first started out, we were strictly in the separate camp. We didn't track joint expenses. We simply took turns paying for things. I'd buy the dinner, she would buy the ice cream. It wasn't a system, it was a distinct lack of one. As we moved into the cognitive load season, maintaining separate silos became a job neither of us wanted. We shifted to joint accounts out of sheer laziness and a need for speed and accessibility. But the real emotional shift happened when we stopped viewing money as a scorecard and started viewing it as fuel for a shared vision. We treated the household as a single business entity. This became crucial when our career shifted. I started my financial practice, and she began working from home to spend more time with our kids. And mine versus yours became a laughable concept compared to ours. And while I encourage you to find an emotional rhythm that works for you, never ignore the legal reality. Titling is ownership. Changing an account from individual to joint isn't just a settings change, it's a gift. In many cases, it makes that money 50% theirs immediately. You also need to take into consideration premarital assets. If you're coming into a relationship with significant executive compensation, an inheritance, or property, keep it separate until you have spoken to an estate attorney. You can share the fruit of the tree, meaning spending any money that's earned from those resources, without chopping down the tree and splitting the wood, such as changing the ownership of the principal. So, in closing, combining finances is 20% math and 80% psychology. If you're fighting about the logistics, you're probably actually fighting about control or fairness. If your current system feels heavy, it might be time to move to the next season of your relationship. Just make sure you talk to a professional before you sign any paperwork.